There are many different subgroups of Asian Americans, and according to the U.S. Census in 2010, there are a total of 17,320,856 Asian Americans living in the U.S., with the Chinese, Filipino, Indian, Vietnamese, Korean, and Japanese being the biggest subgroups living in the U.S. There are many different countries in Asia, and they're broken down into 5 different regions, including South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, North Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East, which comprises of the Arab countries. When we compare the different subgroups, it is to no surprise that they are all very different due to how big Asia is. First is North Asia. The countries comprising of is Russia and Siberia. The distinctive physical features of these indigenous people are that they are white, usually tall and pale-skinned. The climate is very cold within this region, and because it's so large, there are different climates that vary throughout. And there are also some mountainous areas and some areas that are covered in forests. For example, Siberia, which is very far north, is extremely cold all year round, whereas in southern Russia, they tend to get all of the seasons. The languages spoken are primarily Russian and Siberian Turkic. In Central Asia, there are the 5 different countries listed on the slide, and the distinct physical features of the indigenous people are that they are usually darker skinned, shorter in height, rounder in their faces, and they have dark hair and eyes. The climate is considered moderate, and they experience all of the seasons, and the languages primarily spoken are Russian and Turkic. Next is Southeast Asia, which comprises of many different countries listed here, the bigger ones being Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand. Their distinctive physical features include darker skin, shorter in height, rounder in face, and again, dark hair and eyes. Southeast Asia is mainly tropical. It is hot and humid all year round with lots and lots of rain. The languages spoken are listed below. Again, the bigger ones being Thai, Lao, Cambodian, and Vietnamese. Next is the Middle East. The countries listed on the slide are what is comprised of the Middle East. Some popular ones that have been in the news recently include Iran and Iraq, as well as Israel. The distinctive physical features are they have a narrower nose, dark hair and eyes, and they have light tan skin. The climate is primarily hot and dry desert plains, and the languages spoken include Persian, Arabic, Hebrew, Turkish, Armenian, and many, many more. Next is East Asian. The countries comprised are China, Japan, South Korea, North Korea, Taiwan, and Mongolia. The distinctive physical features is that their nose is flat and small, and they have almond-shaped eyes. Next is the climate. It is temperate with colder winters and warmer summers, and Mandarin is the main language spoken across this region. Next is South Asia. The countries are listed below, and the distinctive physical features include that their eyelids possess a highly exposed platform, square face, they have darker skin, specifically in India, and darker hair and eye color. It is wet across the southeast, but more dry in the inner part. This is also the region where the Himalayas are, and the languages are listed below. Some stereotypes of Asian Americans. Asian Americans are proclaimed as a model minority for academic excellence, affluence, strong work ethic, freedom from problems and crime, and family cohesion. They are typically represented as overachievers who are intelligent, industrious, technologically savvy, self-disciplined, self-sufficient, and law-abiding. Here are some current memes that have been floating around about Asian Americans, which correlate to the stereotypes that I had just said before.
On this slide are the racialized sayings against Asian Americans. First is a banana, which is used to refer to an Asian American who has assimilated into white culture. They are referred to as yellow on the outside and white on the inside. Burnt rice refers to darker-skinned Asians. Canardly could be used in the sentence, they can hardly see, which references the structure of Asian American eyes. Ching chong is a term that is used in order to make fun of the language that and how it sounds to people who do not speak the language. A chink is equivalent to the N-word for blacks, and there are two possible meanings for them. The first is a narrow opening or slit, which refers again to the eyes, but it can also be referred to the sound of someone working on a railroad, because the Chinese immigrants had a huge part of making the Transcontinental Railroad in the early 1800s. DWO is driving while Oriental, which makes the idea that being Asian and driving is just as dangerous as being as intoxicated as driving. And to make terms even worse, Oriental is also a derogatory term because it refers to inanimate objects. So here are some derogatory terms. Fresh off the boat is fairly recent, however, it has been around for a while, and it just refers to someone who has just recently immigrated to America. A zipperhead was coined during the Korean War because when Asians were ran over by the jeeps that were used during the war, it looks like the imprint on their faces looked like zippers. Oriental, like I said, is offensive because it refers to inanimate objects. There has been a lot of oppression within U.S. history. The Chinese Exclusion Act is not where it started, but is a huge part of American history where Asians were oppressed. And this was when the U.S. didn't allow Chinese or anyone of Asian descent to marry whites. There were tax problems that the Chinese miners had to deal with in California. And even though it was this tax was said to be discriminating in the form of foreign miners, it was supposed to tax every foreign miner, but it was really just taxing the Chinese. Also, there was an anti-Chinese movement, which is how Chinatowns were created because they were forced to relocate into isolated parts of the city for protection and in order to live in peace. And that is why there are so many Chinatowns today. The Japanese were in prison camps in the West. There were a total of 10 camps in 7 western states of the United States, and this was during World War II. All Americans that had Japanese ancestry were relocated to these concentration camps. While there are a lot of bad things that have happened in the past for Asian Americans, there have also been really great milestones that have been accomplished. A member of the crew of the Challenger space shuttle was Asian American, and her name is Ellison Onizuka. The first Asians arrived in 1847 to America. This was the first documented arrival. However, it is believed that Asians have been in America for longer. And citizenship for U.S.-born Asians was gained in 1898. And in 1952, a whole 100 years after Asians first arrived in the United States, Asians had property rights. And in 1952, the rights became naturalized under the McCarran-Walter Immigration Nationality Act. Some more milestones include the first Asian Olympic gold by Korean Major Sammy, the first American U.S. Senator, Hiram Fung from Hawaii, and the right to intermarry with whites in 1967, as well as Dr. Samuel Ike being the first Asian American U.S. Senator from a mainland state. 1989 was the first American pro sports superstar. In 1999, the first Asian American Chief of Military Service Branch, Japanese American Eric Shinesky. He is the Army's highest ranking officer as the 34th Chief of Staff. And in 2000, the first Asian American Cabinet Secretary, Norman Mineta, was appointed to a cabinet level post. There are also many contributions to America from Asian Americans. The following are just a few: Play-Doh and nectarines, deep focus photography, as well as a bio-artificial liver. Before Japanese American scientist Dr. Kenneth Matsumuro created the bio-artificial liver, a damaged liver was not replaced until a donor could be found. So this was really a life-saving contribution. Here is a picture of deep focus cinematography as well as the bio-artificial liver. And there have been many other contributions. The 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team are known as the most decorated unit in U.S. military history, and they fought in Italy and Germany in World War II. Japanese also helped fight against Japan in the Pacific. They were known as the eyes and ears of the Allies because they spoke the language and knew the culture. The Chinese had a huge contribution, as stated earlier, for the Transcontinental Railroad, and Yahoo and YouTube were also created by Asian American males.